Hi, I'm here with Anthony Puccio, the head writer for the association. He's been on NBA TV and CBS Sports. He also has a show on Twitter, The State of the Association. And we are here with Ross the Boss. So, Ross, Anthony, it's great having you. We're looking forward to talking some basketball.
Guys, thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
It is a pleasure. Now, we've got tons of questions for you because we're super into basketball, but we know you are too. How long have you been into basketball? How long has that been?
Since I came out of the womb.
You came out dribbling?
I came out dribbling. I had a ball in my hand. I was ready to go. No, I was, maybe 4 or 5 years old. My dad put a, NBA-sized basketball in my hand and tried to get me to learn how to dribble, even as small as my hands might have been. And the rest is history, man. When I was 7 years old, he bought season tickets when the Nets traded for Jason Kidd, and that was kind of the journey for me. That surprising Nets team that acquired Kidd and made the championship 2 years in a row. That's when I fell in love with him.
So you're a New Jersey Nets guy, it sounds like, obviously. Are you a Knicks fan or more of a Nets guy?
I grew up more of a Nets guy, definitely, but I have love for both teams. I mean, when you're in New York, New York City basketball is nothing like it. For me, I grew up playing street ball, playing in all the boroughs, playing in the city. So anytime any of those teams are good, St. John's, where I went, my alma mater, anytime these guys are good, it's an exciting time around here.
Okay, Anthony, we're halfway through the season in the NBA. We're halfway through. It's been a really good season. I've been enjoying it. I've watched a lot of basketball. So does Dan. Give me your top 4 teams in the West. Tell me who you like in the West. Give me your top 4. Go.
I'm saying Utah number 1, like everybody else. I want to say the Lakers number 2, but with Anthony Davis out, does that count? Like, are we doing
yes,
with AD or without?
I actually have the Lakers 1. I just respect they won the championship last year. I don't care about AD being in, being out, as long as he's ready for the playoffs. I think the Lakers are still the number 1 power team in the West, but Utah they have the best record in the NBA. I don't question your call, but we can say the Lakers is 2. Who's your 3?
I'm saying Phoenix. I think Phoenix, they're playing great basketball right now. 15 out of the last 18. They have a good team with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton.
They're in second place in the West. And do you remember what they did last year in the bubble? They didn't lose a game, and they still didn't move forward in the playoffs. It's unbelievable. I can't believe that.
Right. Like, they have that momentum from last year, and they're carrying it here. And they got Chris Paul, so they look good. They're my number 3 right now.
Great coaches, too. I love their coaches. I love Booker. He can close games out. I agree with that. Who's your 4? Go.
Wait, let me jump in, Anthony, because I wanted to say, you asked Lakers with AD or without. The way I'm thinking about it is, all that matters is the playoffs. So I want your top 4 as it relates to the playoffs. You got your top 3, and the Suns are such a great story. But who's 4?
I want to say the Clippers, but not of late. I think it's a very close tie between the Clippers and the Nuggets.
The Nuggets are 20 and 15. Nuggets are 20 and 15. They're not looking great. I mean, I know they have Joker, who's probably could be the MVP. We don't know. We'll see what happens. But the Nuggets, to me, have been falling out of grace. I mean, I think they're a 7th seed right now. Yeah. They're not playing up to par. I feel we'll talk about this later, but I feel they'll probably trade for like a JJ Redick. They'll do some trades. But I feel I'm a Clipper guy, so I'm going to say the Clippers. Dan, did I miss anything?
No,
listen. Somebody else as the 4th seed?
Well, Anthony, what I want to hear from you about the Clippers is, how do you bet against Kawhi Leonard? I mean, this guy, it's just hard to bet against him. I mean, he's a hilarious guy in his weirdness. Have you ever gotten to interview him?
I have. He's like, all these NBA players, they have such flaring and like glamorous personalities. Kawhi he's just a very simple guy. I think, for Twitter and social media, people like portray him as like this weirdo or something. Like, he's really just a very simple guy who likes to play basketball.
He really is. He's from a small town in LA called Moreno Valley, which is like San Bernardino. And he's never been a Hollywood guy. He's been very low key. He doesn't go to many functions during the off season. And he loves playing basketball, like you said, and he's very well respected. People like him. He gives back to the community. He's an unbelievable player. As you know, he's first team All NBA usually every year. He's a great defender. He's unbelievable. But let's now talk about your favorite conference, the Eastern Conference, and give me your top 4 teams. Even though there's only 4 teams that are over 500 in the East, which is pathetic. Pathetic, Anthony. You should be embarrassed about your Eastern Conference. Only 4 teams over 500 going into the All-Star break. That has to be a record. But tell me your top 4. Go.
Ross, I got it for you. The Brooklyn Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not true. You got the Sixers, you got the Bucks, and you got some horrible 4 team. But the Nets. The Nets only played 7 games with the top 3 with Durant, Harden, and Irving. They only played 7 times together the whole season. So, do you think when they play together, do you think they're unstoppable? Do you think they can beat the West this year? What do you think is going to happen with the Nets? Tell me your whole prognosis. I want to hear this.
I think it's one of those scenarios where, you're asking me a question. When Kevin Durant comes back, can it work out with 3 of the best players in the NBA? I think, it's one of those situations where in the past with the Warriors, the Heat, if there were another team that I really feel like could match up with them, then I would say, they're not my clear cut. But I'm not really sure who's coming close to this team. And you could question their defense. You could question their style of ball, playing small ball, whatever it might be. But they're in a situation where you have Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and then the best 3-point shooter in the NBA, Joe Harris, on the wing, wide open. It's one of those scenarios where it's like, this is what we have now. Come stop it.
Actually, I wanted to ask a question because when I think about championship basketball, so much of it about it is breaking through to that next level. I mean, you're young for this. I don't even know. Did you get to see Jordan play? I don't know.
I went to a game when he was on the Wizards.
Okay.
That doesn't count.
But listen,
that doesn't count.
Back in the day, Jordan had to break through against the Pistons. It's always about people learning to win the championship. Kyrie won a championship, but it was with LeBron. Kevin Durant won a championship, but it was with that Golden State team that had already won. So they haven't won their own championship. And then there's Harden, who has never won a championship. And sometimes I wonder, does he have what it takes? Now, you used to cover the Nets, but this was before Harden was there because he's only been there for like a month and a half or something. But what's your take on Harden leading people to the championship?
Well, first, I think, to your first point, Kyrie, instead of having LeBron, now he has KD and James Harden. So
absolutely,
it's not that they're doing it on their own, respectfully. Like, they're not doing it on – they have a luxury of an embarrassment of riches, I should really say, with those guys. But with James Harden specifically, I think he should be in the MVP conversation right now, man. He's completely changed his game from when he went to Houston to here.
I totally agree with you. He's totally MVP kind of the assists, the rebounds, and now with points. And now he's the point guard of that team. I mean, Irving told him on the court. He said, "Okay, I'll play shooting guard, and you play point guard, Harden." He said, "Okay." And of course, Steve Nash. I mean, do you think the Steve Nash hiring was a good hiring for Brooklyn? Or, I mean, a lot of people were against it because he has no record as a coach. What's your feeling on that?
I mean, I never thought that they should have fired Kenny Atkinson. The guy brought them from 20 wins to 42 in 2 years and then got them in the position they're in today. Before KD and Kyrie could even step on the floor, they fired him. So I was always against that. I don't think Steve Nash is a bad coach, but I think it's risky to bring in somebody that's never coached a game before when you have a 2-year window with the superstars. Now, Steve Nash has done a good job. He just won Coach of the Month. But, I mean, look, I think I could win Coach of the Month. Ross, you might be able to win Coach of the Month if you had James Harden, KD, and Kyrie Irving on your team.
And Joe Harris.
Exactly.
I agree with 100%.
With all due
Pooch,
respect to
I'm going
Steve
to call
Nash.
you Pooch because that's your nickname. I'm calling you Pooch.
Pooch.
I can call you that. So let me ask you a question about – do you think it's because the owner of the Nets is Canadian and Steve Nash is Canadian? Do you think there's a Canadian connection there? I always felt that when Steve Nash was hired. I felt there was some Canadian – takeover of the NBA, and it's happening right now as we speak, and no one cares about it except Ross the boss. I see all these Canadians playing in the league, like Jamal Murray and all these other guys are playing that are really good, but I'm worried about the whole Canadian takeover in the NBA, and it's starting right now with Nash and the owner of the Nets. What's your theory on that? Okay,
no, I don't think it's that. And the Nets owner, he's originally from Taiwan. I know he does have I don't know what his deal is with Canada. I think with Steve Nash, it was that him and Sean Marks were close, and ultimately, it was about whether KD signed off on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I also think that the coaches that, I mean, like Steve Kerr got the guys to play in Golden State, I think partly because of his pedigree as an NBA champion himself. So, Steve Nash didn't win the championship, but he's got a lot of pedigree. So that's how I see it. I want to jump back to a point that we were making though, Anthony, because definitely James Harden, Durant, and Kyrie Irving, they've got all the talent, and I totally agree with you. None of these players win alone. I don't care who it is. It is a team effort. You need the team. I just think there's something where you got to get over the hump of a mental place where you believe you can win the championship. And I feel like Harden's starting to turn that corner on this team. I think he sees it. Does that strike you as right?
Yeah, I think you're on the money there, because when he was really dogging it in Houston, I mean, he literally said, I will do whatever it takes to get to Brooklyn. And this was going on since like right after the bubble. He wanted to go to Brooklyn. He said, I want to win a championship. I'll do whatever it takes. So when he got here, he told Steve Nash that. He told Kyrie. He told KD. He said, whatever you guys need me to do, I'll do it. And that's he's putting his money where his mouth is. He's averaging the least amount of shots per game of his career, and he's averaging the most assists per game of his career. Like, the guy is just he's revolutionary in the sense for the Nets that, like, they haven't had a point guard like him since Jason Kidd, and Jason Kidd could not score or shoot the rock the way that James Harden can, and he did not attract double teams the way that James Harden did, or does, I should say. So when you surround him with KD and Kyrie and Joe Harris, and then you have these other guys that really just reap the benefits of him getting double teamed on a pick and roll, he's the most important player on the Nets right now. They're doing all this without KD.
They are, and it has to stem from he went to a great college, James Harden, an unbelievable school where only super athletes come from, like myself, Arizona State. So there's
where
a reason
Ross
why
went to
he's
school.
playing so well. Let's talk. The trade deadline is coming up. It's the end of the month, and I think a lot of teams are going to make a lot of deals coming up. The one team I want to bring up to you is a team that's underachieving right now, and I feel they're a playoff team. They're in the playoffs. It's the Boston Celtics, but I feel they're going to make a move. They're going to trade for a big-time player. I'm not quite sure. I want to hear your opinion on it. What do the Celtics have to do to be more than just a sub-500 team right now?
They need a big man. They really need a big man. I mean, they had Enes Kanter last year, who kind of got the job done and was good enough to get you a double-double and did the dirty work that you needed. They lost him. So they picked up Tristan Thompson, who hasn't really played this year. Daniel Theis, he's not getting the job done. You have talented players in Jason Tatum.
Andre Drummond, is he a possibility?
That's what I was wondering.
What do you think?
That's where I was going with it. I'm thinking Drummond. Even, look, on the buyout market, you have DeMarcus Cousins. And not that I think the world of DeMarcus Cousins, but right now they need a big man that can create for them and that can rebound the basketball. And they don't have that. So, that's something that they have had in the past. Not a crazy presence, not a big presence, but just enough to get the job done around their talent. And they don't have that right now. So I'm thinking Drummond, I'm thinking DeMarcus Cousins. And, I don't know what other bigs are on the market right now, but expect them to make a move, maybe even like a Kevin Love type of player. Cleveland doesn't need it. They don't need all those players, those big men.
Pooch, what other players do you hear? You're in the middle of this. You hear more stuff than I do. I'm on the West Coast. We don't hear anything. We just hear a few rumbles here and there. Tell me some of your rumbles that you hear players going to be traded and where are they going? Give me some predictions. Tell me what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
I think your guess is as good as mine. I think Lonzo Ball is going to be on the move, though. I think, like you mentioned before, I think JJ Redick is on the outs. I think you're going to see a fire sale from New Orleans because they have a very talented team, but they're underachieving. So I think you look at guys like that. You look at a team like the Cavaliers. They have 5 centers. What team needs 5 centers? And all of them are talented. So you talk about Larry Nance. You're talking about Andre Drummond, JaVale McGee. Those are 3 guys right off the bat. The name I want to see, and I'm very curious about, is Bradley Beal because the Wizards were really underachieving. Now they're kind of, since the Eastern Conference is so bad, they're hanging around that 8 seed. They're like 3.5 games out, but
they've won 7 out of 8 games. They're playing unbelievable basketball.
They're playing really good ball.
I mean, Westbrook finally decided to play basketball. He's not sitting out anymore like he was for the first quarter of the season. Now he's playing every game.
But even so, I feel like Bradley Beal wants out. That's my sense. I mean, I don't know, Anthony. Does that sound right to you?
It's conflicting. I mean, it's been known that he's wanted out. If this team isn't winning, he's wanted out for a long time. He's frustrated there, and you could tell. The guy has scored. They've lost 11 straight games in which he scored 40-plus points. Who wouldn't want to be out after that?
I would want to be out. If I scored 40 points, we lose every game. I wouldn't want to be there. Dan, would you?
Yeah. Imagine 11 times in a row.
Pooch, no.
No. So I'm looking at a team like the Knicks, and I'm looking at the Knicks, and I'm saying they're playing good basketball right now, but they're not a championship team. And they're looking across the river, and they're saying, the Nets are stealing our thunder. They have KD, they have Kyrie, they have James Harden, and everybody's talking about the Nets. Yeah, we're having fun with the Knicks homegrown team, but we have all these assets, and we have all these draft picks, and we have money. Why not bundle something together and try and get Bradley Beal? Try and get a guy like Zach LaVine. I don't think LaVine would be on the move because I think the Bulls absolutely love him and don't want to give him up. But those are the names I'm most intrigued by: Bradley Beal, Zach LaVines of the world.
Well, the other thing that you're saying that makes a lot of sense, and this makes sense because you're so in the know about it, is we all know that you can't get a trade done if you don't have the assets. So where Beal wants to go, whether the Wizards would deal him or not, whatever team would want him, which of course any team would want him, they are going to have to figure out, do they have the assets? So the Knicks have the assets. What other teams have the assets to get Bradley Beal?
Not many. And that's the issue right now, is that all these teams have given up their picks. I think the Thunder have all, like the whole NBA.
They have the entire draft.
They have everybody's draft for the next 6 years.
And the pick goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
But the team to watch in that aspect, and Ross, you mentioned it before, is Denver. They have the assets, they have the depth, and they have the picks.
They totally do.
Money.
Yeah.
And if they want to make that jump towards the championship, championship contending team at the very least, surround Jokic and Murray with somebody, they're gonna have to let go of some of those homegrown guys that they love so much.
I want to ask at least one more question. We're having you stay over a bit, Anthony, because we're loving the conversation. But
I'm happy to be here.
All right, so this is a question that just is on my mind. I've watched the NBA for many, many years, and it's a superstar-driven league, and it has been for a long, long time, since as far back as I can remember, and even further. The Utah Jazz are a huge story. They are playing like the best team in basketball, and I think, what does it say about me as a fan, or maybe the NBA in general, that I'm actually legitimately asking the question, but can they actually win with their roster as constructed in the championship?
And then I'll answer that question after Pooch does, but I have a theory.
All right.
Go ahead.
Pooch first.
I think there are two factors to it. One, I think there's actually that legitimate concern. Can they win without having another star there? You have the Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert show, and obviously the depth. We could talk about that for days. But we know, like you said, it's a star-driven league. So it is an absolutely valid question. But number two, I think, is just the lack of media coverage. I think the lack of people talking about them. They're a Utah market. They're not – if the Knicks are 18-18 and the fans are celebrating in the streets and ESPN is jumping up and down like it's 1973.
Right.
With all due respect. Like, there are teams almost – and not to pin it on the media because I'm in it myself, but, when the Lakers are good, the Knicks are decent, we tend to glorify these teams so much, but then you have a team like Utah who wins 21 out of 23, and it's like, it's another day at the office. Like for me, I and the association with the newsletter, I've really tried to key in on them because I feel like they're the greatest untold story this season. Like we see the tweets, we see all the unbelievable stats about them, but why don't we know more about what's going on with that team? The continuity with them. They were the only team in the NBA through 20 games that had the same starting lineup in a COVID struck season. We don't know about it. Did anyone know that?
No.
I knew that, and they had no major injuries this year. They had no problems with COVID this year, and that's the main reason they are where they are today. They're like they have nothing wrong with their lineup at all the whole season. It's been like flawless.
Right.
And also, I saw their second half schedule. It's the easiest schedule I've ever seen. If I was making up a schedule for my team, I would want their schedule. It's twice as easy as it is the first half. It's unbelievable. And I also have a theory. Their uniforms are probably the ugliest in the NBA. I feel that helps them a lot too. I could be wrong, but I just feel that uniform factor helps them a lot when the team sees that. Like, oh, that's nasty. I don't want to be around that.
But if that was true, then the Cavs would have won when they had Sean Kemp. Like, that was the worst uniform ever. And by the way, this isn't even the Jazz don't even have the worst uniform they've ever had in history. But I do want to say this,
Ross might have unlocked something and why there's so much parity in the NBA this year because all the awful jerseys.
If you see the Miami Heat's jerseys when they it's like an Art Deco show. It's unbelievable.
I think you're onto something here.
I appreciate, though, Anthony, you recognizing that there are these stories that get untold, and this is why you're good at what you do. You understand there's all these stories out there. I've always been a Cavs fan, and before LeBron, we had some really good teams, but I don't think they got a lot of coverage. You know, we were a main rival of the Bulls back in the day before when you were a child, and you know, we never got the coverage, and I can just imagine that Utah Jazz fans are hoping that they're going to pull what I would call like a Detroit Pistons with the Ben Wallace, Rip Hamilton, when that team came together and won it all. I don't know how old you were for that, but that's the last time I remember a team winning.
I watched that team up close. Sorry to cut you off. I don't mean. I was a young kid, man. I remember that team real well. The Ben Wallace team with Chauncey Billups and Rasheed Wallace and those guys you're talking about? 03,
absolutely. Yeah. That's the last team I remember winning without a true superstar, and I loved watching it. And I'm rooting for the Jazz in this. So, Anthony, we want to thank you for coming on. This has been great. We want to have you back. You know, to hear an insider talk about it, because you really do know these things in a way that Ross and I don't. I won't speak for you, Ross, but I don't know them at the level of Anthony Puccio. So, Anthony, thanks for coming on the show. We hope to have you back soon.
No, thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.